Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Yakuza 5 Extra Hard Difficulty walkthrough. This is part 4, chapter 3, The Price of Truth, and we're once again running around with the loan shark guy, trying to get to the bottom of this conspiracy. Things have been kicking off. In the last video we fought a dude with a big stick, and all I did was use a weapon to beat him up, give him a taste of his own medicine with the exclusive techniques that this character has with weapons. And now we're pushing forward to that nice pink nipple on the map to do whatever the hell we have to do next, which probably involves talking to Japanese men and then beating up a whole slew of them. But it wouldn't be a Yakuza if a man in a face mask didn't insult my clothing and then provoke me into having a fight with him. So we're going to take on some town thugs here, and we're going to show you some of the combat finally of this character, because outside of the last video you didn't really see too much of the stuff that I was doing because I had a weapon. So here's a moment where the omnidirectional block would be great, because personally the first improvement I would make to Yakuza combat is when you guard on every side, but if it's a heavy attack perhaps, or some kind of telegraphed attack, it cannot be blocked. Or maybe they just grab you to get through your guard, something like that. Blocking, with the fiddliness of the precision of the movement in this game, is not the best choice, especially when there's a lot of people behind you swinging and a lot of people attacking, and on extra hard the enemy's aggression is the highest it can be outside of... can't you wear something that pisses off the guys? I think there's like an anger piece of jewellery that makes people really mad. So the block could be better, but for the most, you don't really block too much, you dodge more than anything. And speaking of things that could be better, did you see that then? The grab detection. It's another thing that I would love to change in Yakuza games, because the amount of times you go for a grab and you get fucked up because it doesn't detect correctly is way too high. There was a counter to being grabbed, that's really cool, and here's a very painful looking heat action. But Shinada's combat, jabs into running attack that can then be chained into other things, or I think he does like a charge knee as well. He does some kind of knee attack as we put this guy down with a sign, smash, see you later bro. And that's the end of that fight, so let's move on, shall we? We didn't even get to the objective, they challenged us so quickly. But you'll notice on the map there's tons of waypoints. The reason that it does this is because it's telling you to go to a taxi, I think. I'm going to be going into these restaurants, and they're going to be quick transitions to me exiting restaurants, because all I do is I go in and I eat off the menu to try and get my life back up and get all those bonuses for spirit and power and so on. The reason you do this I've already explained, but I'll reiterate if this is the first video of mine you're watching. It enables you to have the strongest possible character you can going into any single encounter. And if this is the video I think it is, we're about to fight for 20 minutes with no checkpoint. So you're going to have to bring every trick in the book you can, or you can use healing items, which I'm going to use at the end, because once again, extra hard removes checkpoints for some bizarre reason, and it doesn't enable you to practice the bosses or get really impressive boss fights, because when you get booted out you have to do the fucking mission again, which absolutely baffles my mind, but I've already said this several times and I don't want to bore you. But we're going to the taxi that's closest to us, which just so happens to be this one. And then we're going to be moving into something that's a little bit more interesting to watch if you're watching this with no real knowledge of Yakuza. So here we go. This is really tricky, this place. It's not as tricky as an area in Yakuza 0, or not 0, sorry, it was Kiwami, wasn't it? Yakuza Kiwami, where you had to come down here, and I was getting one-pieced, and there was all fire on the ground, there was people with guns, like really, really dangerous, but it's still not easy. So as soon as you hit that, here comes the first fight. Big old group of dudes. You do have backup, but all he'll do is get in the way. You want to start off by building heat, by throwing people, and then once you've got your heat attack, you want to do whatever works best for you. I like to isolate people, and, well, lots of enemies here. Be careful of invisible walls as well. The invisible walls will get you bummed. As I get punched. Now I dodge away. So there's a slide attack to knock some people down. When people are on the ground, you can pick them up, you can do some kind of, crazy moves. He broke out of it, unfortunately. But lots of dudes here. Lots of dudes to put down. There's a slide attack. Really good for crowd control. And I think I'm going to try and do a heat attack on this guy. There it was. Does he do the... Oh wow, is he just going to break his neck? Painful game, man. Snapping dude. So he's dead. We can now progress on to his buddies. There's the good thing about the enemies in these games is if you've played a few of them, you can generally tell all the combos the thugs are going to do, because they all carry the same moveset. So you can learn the timings on things like tiger drops and when to block and when to dodge. The individual kicks that you see happening here that are clipping me a lot, they're the only real attacks that are probably awkward from these dudes, because they're the attacks that happen quite quickly and can catch you off guard. But another heat action here to thin the herd, put him down, finish him off, and then we can combo into the next dude. Isolate him, couple of hits, into the unique move, and knock him into the wall. At this moment in time, you might be wondering how upgraded is my guy. I don't have all the abilities, so some of the moves that you might not see me doing, I might not actually have. Unfortunately, upgrading on this game involves doing that stupid fucking i7 side-scrolling beat-em-up thing, and it's insanely boring compared to the third game and the fourth game, which were just boss fights. And those boss fights were really good because you could practice the bosses, which is so clever. They enabled you to practice bosses in this VR place, and then you come to this, and it's like, nope. You want to practice bosses? Good luck, do it on hard. But we have this lovely novelty sequence here. This guy on the forklift is going to chase us, and you have to run away from it. This is actually one of the missions that you can do in that separate mission mode, and it's actually pretty tricky. This guy's really fast, and you have to do some super gormless arcadey nonsense to get past him like this. Like, look at it. This is where Yakuza falls apart for me, because it's a super arcadey game that is borderline broken at times and ridiculous and stupid, with mechanics that are incredibly subpar, and then they'll introduce something like this where it's just, what the fuck is this? It's so dumb. It's funny the first time you do it, but when it's actually challenging, it's not so funny. It just becomes dumb, and it's long too. It's not like this is a short sequence, you have to do this for a while. And you can't jump over things, which you think you would be able to, but just knee shit, break shit, keep moving forward. You can imitate my path, or you can find a better one. This is by no means, the fastest way of doing this. Not my idea of fun gameplay, personally. It's not what I come for Yakuza to do, really. But I think we're coming up on the end, just around this next corner. So, hopefully didn't take too much damage off him. There it is, there's the end. And then we're going to warp to a boss fight against the dude with 2 sticks. So Rebar Man is called Kubota. And once again, he's dangerous because he's doing powerful moves, powerful multi-hit combos with weapons. And you've got to pick your spots, pick when to attack, and understand that if you do it incorrectly, you might get in trouble. That was a counter. Did you see that? That is Shinada's counter. It puts him into a grab state that enemies can break. Just think about that for a little while. A counterattack technique, by its very name, is an ability to get one upon an enemy and punish their attacks. That move puts it into a state where they can indefinitely break it. Nobody thought about that before. They can't have, or it wouldn't have made it in the game, because it makes 0 sense. What is the point in having a precise, responsive, high execution move compared to mashing square to win when it gets you no advantage and you would have done more damage mashing square? Don't understand it, personally. Maybe if you wear the grip gloves, or you wear those, make it harder for the enemy to break your shit, maybe then you can do it. I don't know. But it stands out as one of those holes in the Shinada gameplay for me, because I like the counterattack. I love doing that Kamaki parry, and then getting those unique heat actions that you can do with Kazuma to beat people after it. In fact, it's one of the best ways of doing the most damage in the game, to get those moves working, as this guy grabs me and we spin him, and then we proceed to smack this dude with a stick, which I don't get the whole stick smacking stuff. If somebody hit me with one of them sticks, I don't think I'd be all too eager to get back up. But then again, I don't think I'd be all too eager to work for a mob, especially a foreign mob. Can you imagine me in the Yakuza, can't speak a lick of Japanese? It's not going to end well at all. I'm probably going to be the dude that's used to tie bodies together and clean shit up, and I'm the dude who gets fucked by all the new interns who don't like the ladies. That's pretty much my job in the Japanese Yakuza. Because of course there's Scottish Yakuza, not to be confused with. This guy's got a gun, you might notice. You want to get rid of the guy with the gun first, and you're going to take some damage getting to him, because when you get a big bunch of enemies around you and you don't have a block that can block every direction, you're going to get hit. But luckily enough, we do this unique heat action, we get this guy put down, and then we need to pick up the gun. A big hole in this game for me is guns on the floor for you that don't have bullets in will not be able to fire. If the enemy picks it up, they get bullets, and I hate that kind of bullshit. Like, guns in this game are incredibly powerful unless you're wearing that red armor, and I don't even know if that red armor exists in this game that automatically deflects bullets. I hope it does, because it's one of the best items in Yakuza 4, because it was really useful. but you'll notice all I'm doing here, spacing the enemies, shooting them with the gun. Every so often I'm getting hit, and there's so many dudes in this sequence with so little checkpoints that every one of these hits is going to add up, and I'm going to end up taking on a boss with barely any life. Because just look at it. It's really difficult to get away from. Like, I can't imagine somebody trying to no damage this entire sequence, because you'd have to play like a massive bitch for the entire thing, and nobody wants to do that, you know? There's a difference between using powerful techniques that work and playing like a massive bitch because it's the only way to survive. Like, there was a part of me that didn't used to like certain games where you had to do things like that. Like, I was never a big fan of blocking in God of War because I always preferred the roll, but the roll just isn't as safe as blocking, and sometimes blocking is way more effective. Like Ninja Gaiden. You can't skip this either, guys. I'm trying to skip it here because I realise there's way too many dudes, I'm taking way too much damage, and this is a long sequence. But in Ninja Gaiden, you can do ultimate techniques, which give you full immunity, they do a lot of damage, they automatically lock onto enemies, and they're one of the best ways of clearing out anything in that game except for bosses. Certain bosses, you know, it just doesn't do good against them. Other bosses, it's okay. But then you realise that you can do the same kind of thing, but have more control over it by doing things like invulnerable moves. Izuna Drop's a great one. Izuna Drop is such a powerful technique because not only does it give you immunity while you're doing it when you get them in the air, but it also enables you to kill somebody, get that essence, which you can then on-landing UT into something better, and you can kill tons of people. But then you also realise there's even more to that game than that. You can do things like the wind path into guillotine throw, into obliteration technique, which kills people because you dismembered them by hitting them in the wall. And then the entire game can become a sequence of using invulnerability moves to just thin the numbers until you get the last dude, and then on the last dude you do the fucking juggling where you do the shuriken stuff and all that, and then you're like, oh, there we go, we won. And the entire game becomes that. And I never enjoyed that aspect to that. You know, it's like on stuff like Devil May Cry 4. Dante is capable of having 1,000,001 moves that he can do, and they're really impressive and they're really awesome, and some of them are high execution and great, but none of them do the same damage as distorting a real impact. So why ever do them? You know, I'm the kind of person who there's a time when I want to be stylish, and there's a time when I want to just get shit done. Overall, I'm an efficiency type of player. I want to be the strongest I can be, I want to do the most damage I can do, and I want to do whatever it is that I enjoy the most, which is usually really high damage, some sort of counter technique. And when it comes to playing as Dante in Devil May Cry 4, I never really played with too many things because how good that move was, and that game to me, when you play as him, becomes an opportunity of when can I do this awesome distorted technique. And you can do it with other moves, but none of them are like that. And then you can do it with Virgil, and Virgil's even more ridiculous because it's even more broken then, because you can use concentration to make it even more ridiculous. And it's just that strange feeling of, there's these games that have this combat, but to do it at certain levels, like if you're going for no damage and stuff, you have to play them in a very particular way. And Yakuza is a game that the only way to no damage something like this would either be to be the most patient, genius Yakuza player ever, or bring a good weapon that barely breaks or you can repair, that can control the situation, builds insane amounts of heat, and enables you to do multiple heat takedowns on 4+ guys, which kills crowds really quickly. And that's all you'd do. You would run away, you would taunt, and you would use that heat action to get rid of 4 or 5 guys, and that's what you'd repeat. And then it would just be a case of getting that run where you don't get clipped. And you might be thinking, well, that sounds really easy. And it is, compared to beating people up and doing fancy combos and being stylish, because the game's just not designed to be precise enough for you to do that and not take damage in these massive groups. It's almost impossible outside of sadomasochist geniuses. But then you need to bear in mind, guys, you know when we started this mission a couple minutes ago? There's not been a checkpoint on Extra Hard. So if you get hit and you reset, you have to start at the beginning. And that's not speaking, this video is 28 minutes long, which means the rest of the fights that are happening are 14 minutes long. So there's another 14 minutes of fighting multiple enemies, and then a boss, 0 checkpoint. And then a second boss, 0 checkpoint. All of this is on the same checkpoint. So if you were gonna no damage this entire thing, you'd probably, not only would you be bringing, that weapon I mentioned for the heat attacks to crowd control, but you'd probably be bringing a super upgraded bunch of guns so you can fuck up everybody as fast as possible, and in the end, we have this incredibly super efficient gameplay of you doing nothing but the best crowd control, high damage cheese that exists in the game, and it's still 20 minutes long, and it's so boring nobody wants to watch. And that's the problem. Like, to do that kind of high-level play, there has to be a way to make it interesting. So, how do you make it interesting in a game such as Yakuza without tweaking mechanics and making the game play better? Maybe you bring a bunch of weapons. Maybe you don't put an invisible wall blocking me in a corner so both your team can gangbang me with sticks. Maybe you've figured the game out and there's some technique with Shinada that enables him to just get complete immunity and kill everybody, and it's super OP, and all the forums are alive with people saying we shouldn't use it. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't understand it. What I do see is a game that has combat that's really arcadey and really fun, but so full of holes, it's not fun to do that kind of stuff. Which is the reason why, when you see people do no damage, it generally involves tiger dropping, because tiger dropping is rewarding precise timing with invincibility and high damage. And all you have to do then is learn timings, and then it becomes a case of practicing timings and getting that really good run. And that's something that I love to do. But if you don't like tiger drops, you probably hate that. So it's just this interesting conundrum of, I don't really think high-level play exists in these games, because it's impossible to do a room such as this without fighting in a very specific way. And an argument you could put my way... I'm going to be healing soon, by the way, because if I die, everything is wasted. Pick up the big stick. Always pick up the big sticks. But then we move on to, can there be high-level play in those other games that you mentioned if at a high level people use the same techniques? Well, if you've ever watched Ninja Gaiden 2, the way to spot a high-level player is somebody who does other things in between those things I mentioned. The easiest way to spot high-level Ninja Gaiden players are people who do crazy weapons that you shouldn't really use. If you see anybody using the Vigorian flails out of very specific moments, the Tonfas out of very specific moments, even though the Tonfas are amazing, using weapons and using combos and setups you don't normally see, that's the way to check. People using shurikens a lot. Anyone who uses shurikens a lot understands the usefulness of them, but doesn't spam them. If you see a guy who just plays that game at range chucking shurikens, that's not high-level play, that's somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. If you see somebody stunning people so he can cover distance, that's a clever player, because shurikens are one of the most underutilized aspects of Ninja Gaiden in its entirety. Devil May Cry, it's easier to spot high-level players in that, because not only will they be taking no damage, but they'll also be launching people, jump cancelling, swapping styles, doing all kinds of crazy moves, and at the end of it you'll be so gobsmacked you'll want to play the game again. Easier to spot people in that, because they'll be doing Lucifer combos, trick cancels, and all kinds of crazy stuff. What else did we mention? God of War. God of War's different. High-level play in God of War is usually heavily restricted, and then it's just a case of survival is what makes it cool. You don't generally see people doing juggle combos or any kind of launch combos or anything too fancy in God of War, because it doesn't exist. It's way too specific. And if it does exist, I've not come across anybody really utilising it, which is unfortunate, because just look at God of War 3, shall we? In God of War 3, there's a couple of different versions of the same weapon, isn't there? There's the Underworld purple Chaos Blades, there's the green Chaos Blades, and then there's the red Chaos Blades, and they're all intrinsically very similar. I don't think if you swap between them, if it's even quick enough for you to do juggles with different weapons and get all fancy. Maybe there's true skill videos and combo competitions for God of War that I've just never seen, but I don't think there is, because it's one of those games where it's just not designed that way at all. It's not one of those games. Maybe the new one will be, who knows. But to bring it back to Yakuza, I'm nearly dead. I've been fighting for like 15 minutes. I've been trying my best to, do moves that are effective, do strategies that work, pick up weapons, dominate people, use different attacks when I get opportunities, and I've still nearly lost 2 entire life bars. And there's a boss coming up after this. I don't know how you would do it. And once again, that's why the gameplay on YouTube is boss specific and Amon specific, because doing these scenarios is ridiculous. And even a person who's legendary for this kind of stuff in my regards, which is the Godfather Dictator, when I've watched his Yakuza 3 and 4 stuff, when he's done those big fights with 50 million dudes in them and then a boss, not only has he worn armor that deflects bullets automatically, which in any other game you might look at it and be like, dude, you're cheating. And if you know Dictator, he's the last guy on the planet who would ever want to cheat, because he loves to earn those hard-earned victories, and he loves to torture himself in those ways that only people who enjoy that stuff understand. And additionally, on the third game, he used the War God amulet, which instantly refills your heat, because he understands that this game on extra hard and the way the checkpoint work is cheap as fuck. There's always multiple guys, there's always tons of dudes, shooting you and stuff, so getting those no damage victories without using these items can be insane. Because replaying a 3-minute fight that can go wrong at any time, you have to do a 15-minute mission. It's horrible. It's really horrible. And they've improved it a little bit in their defense, because in Zero, Kiwami, and I think it might be in Yakuza 6, I don't know if it's in this game, because I've only seen it in the Japanese menus, it's in Ishin as well, you can go into the menu and save anywhere. This is not something you were usually able to do, because of course you had to use the phone boxes. So with this new mechanic, when you're on those longer missions where you have to do 7 things before the fight starts, you can save on the street before you get to the trigger that cues a cutscene and cues the fight. So you can save outside the clubs and then go in the club and fight the boss. This is from Yakuza 3, by the way. This is like the ultimate move that you can do as Kazuma, is that multiple chain Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, different moves there. So when I first saw that as Shinada, I was really impressed. Then when I played Yakuza 3 and Kazuma did it, it was that moment where you realise that this series truly does use a lot of those animations again. And I've got nothing against it, because I think it's cool. It's just, it doesn't have the same impact as the first time you see it. The first time you see it, that is a cool move. But I'm getting beaten up by a boss, and there's a boss after this. I can't imagine it. I'll have to search, see if anybody's been crazy enough to no damage this on extra hard, this entire sequence. Because there might be some Japanese dude that's done it. Like, look at the guy that no damage, no upgrade, kick me sign, hard mode, God hand. Then that's... I can't even begin to tell you how difficult that is, guys, because God hand's probably the hardest game I've ever played. And I've played a lot of hard games. And I say that very specifically, because you're probably thinking, oh, I played God hand, it wasn't that bad. I mean, without using reels, without using the God hand at all. So, very different game then. And I probably should say that it's hard on hard, but it's hard on normal, dude. It's hard on easy. God hand is a game that even on easy will embarrass you and humble you, and it's too much for some people's pride. And like, even when you feel like you're improving in that game, you can still get pieced up. It's a game where you're never ever completely safe, and you never just, like, Bayonetta for an example. Bayonetta's a game that I haven't played in over a year. I could put it on now and I would be no damaging fights. I would be bullying people, knocking them into the air, comboing them and doing all kinds of weird goofy shit, because that is a game that once you reach a skill level on it, you're untouchable. Don't get me wrong, certain stuff will hit me and I won't do the entire thing no damage, but I will be beating things up without them touching me, like I was born to play that game, and I'm not even that good at Bayonetta. God Hand, don't even think that exists. It's just like Ninja Gaiden, it's just like Souls games. Even when you're good at those games, you get clipped. A lot. And sometimes it feels like bullshit, sometimes it doesn't, but it's just that constant pressure of, even if you know exactly what you're doing and you know exactly what you have to do, it's still tough. It still constantly challenges you, and I think that's the reason those games are so timeless. Because when you look at something like a Bayonetta or a Devil May Cry, or those games where when you get to a certain skill ceiling, it's less about the danger of the enemies, and it's more about the dangers of pride when it comes to how you kill them. Because you want to get fancier, you want to get more technical, you want to get more ridiculous, more skillful, stay in the air the entire time, jumping off walls, doing crazy bullshit stuff that no one's ever seen. It's more about your own abilities than the enemies killing you. Even though the enemies are still dangerous and those games are still very difficult, it's not the same in something like a Ninja Gaiden, you know? Because those games are... It's kill or be killed the entire time. Similarly with, you know, God Hand and Souls. Souls to a lesser extent, because you can manipulate souls a lot better. For instance, in a Souls game, if you carry a shield, you can negate 100% of that game. You know, there's only certain magic attacks that your shields can't do, and you could always carry a magic shield for that and augment it so that it can. You know, it's very specific stuff. But if you don't use it, then it becomes something interesting. Like, I still to this day think that Ninja Gaiden 2 is one of the hardest games I've ever played. Hands down. And some people listen to that and they think, well, wow, you know, I think Ninja Gaiden 2 is nothing compared to this or compared to that. And there's one reason, guys. Play it without using items. There you go. You've got one of the hardest games ever made. Because that is a game that is designed to fuck you up at all times, regardless of how good you think you are, and you don't realise how much those items help. It's almost like the game's designed around them, so the moment you stop using them, it becomes a completely different environment. And that's how I beat that game, without using items. And I don't recommend it on anybody, because I had these crucibles against bosses, where I was on them for fucking hours, and I hate being on stuff like that. I really do. When you're in that moment of just suffering, it's so miserable. At the end of it, it feels great, and you realise you enjoyed some of it, but when you're in it, I can't recommend that feeling less. But this is Yakuza, and we're up against the boss of this level, who's a dude with a knife who's very quick, and he's got a grab that breaks your guard, so be very careful of that, guys. And he's going to stamp me on the ground because you can't get up quick enough. So many things I'd change in these games, but I do love them. And I apologise if you're not interested in any of those other titles I just spoke about, but if you're sitting here asking me, you know, what's this guy talking about? I've never played these other games. You should. If you like the combat in this game and you want games that have better combat, every one of those games I mentioned has better combat than this game. But it has enough common values that you can understand both. So you'll be playing some really, really awesome games, and if you get into them, you probably will never stop, because any of those games I've mentioned, you can play for the rest of your life, because they have that much depth, if you want to truly invest in them. And I appreciate this now so much more than I used to. It's not even funny, because I see E3, I see all these new games that are being announced, I see this hair that was in my mouth that I just picked out because it was on the roof of my gob and it felt awful, and I acknowledge that games aren't being made like this anymore. Games are becoming experiences, almost universally, and Japanese game design, which is the game design that I like the most because it requires precision, and they were not afraid to, you know, they never patronised. They wanted you to spend hours getting better, or you never progressed. Look at the shmup genre. That is a genre where, unless you pay money, you will never get past that first level, because you'll never be good enough to. And a skilled player looks night and day different, because he'll beat the game on one credit and he'll look godly. But he didn't get there overnight, guys. It took him years or months or however long it takes. Games aren't being designed like that anymore. Games are being designed so that the entry level to play is so low that anybody can play them, so they make the most money. And it makes me very sad. Just like this guy when he's in heat mode, very dangerous. But you'll notice that counter that I did then enables me to get behind him, which is kind of useful if you want to go into his combos, but the problem with an enemy that's in heat is they get those interesting properties. But as I've mentioned in this guide, when you hit people from behind, they cannot recover conventionally like they will from in front. So the best way to deal damage in Yakuza is to dodge behind an enemy and then do whatever you want with them. If you can get them near a wall, you can bound them, and then you can do bounding attacks and extend your combos. But it does take a little bit more timing and precision. And of course, to do this counter to get behind is not the easiest move unless you know this guy's movesets, and I don't. So what you're watching here is the second time I fought this boss, and unfortunately I couldn't really practice him outside of playing through on hard, and for all I know this boss is different on extra hard. But this is the end of the battle. Once you get to this little cutscene, all you have to do is win it with the quick time events, and then you've done that gauntlet of a fight. So good luck with that, guys. It's not easy, and as always, you take care now.